Hi guys, Khan here, and this is a lightning fast guide for Warhammer 40,000 Battlesector on the hardest difficulty, Company Captain. A lot of this guide is to help you survive the early levels of the game where you have a very limited pool of points and units. So your general goal is to get the most kills per action point used, not the most damage dealt per action point. So skills and weapon unlocks that result in kill rather than pure damage are more valuable. For example, frag grenades result in more damage to swarm units, but at this difficulty don't remove models.
Marines ready!
Auto bolt rifle, even though it does less damage than frag grenades, it still removes models, so it is still a better point investment than frag grenades. This is important because the most common threat you'll be fighting, especially early on, are swarm units like termagants, hormagaunts, and gargoyles, which at full model count do significant damage and wear down your army with sheer numbers. A full unit of 8 hormagaunts hits just as hard at 10% health as they do at 100% health. Reducing a swarm unit's model count to 4 or less cripples their damage output, and you can, in most cases, safely ignore them to focus on bigger threats. Wiping them out isn't necessary, and reducing their numbers to 2 or 3 models sometimes causes the AI to retreat. That is why you want to avoid frag grenades and some hand flamers in the skill tree so that those points can be spent better elsewhere. Heavy flamers on predators, speeders, aggressors, and dreads are still useful. Aggressors' frag storm launchers, on the other hand, are still good because they do not consume action points, so they're free damage, unlike frag grenades, which do consume action points. Hero units without upgrades can kill 4 units max, so use them to finish off all these small remnants that are left behind.
Damn pests everywhere!
Because of the limited amount of skill points you get, you have to choose early whether you want to focus your army on range or melee. Range is easier to play, but I believe melee is actually a lot more effective and fun. However, melee is very difficult and requires a lot more strategy and maneuvering to pull off. So I will do a separate video on how to build and fight with glorious melee, just as the Emperor intended. So for now, we'll focus on a range army, and for a range army, you should save all your points to unlock auto bolt rifles as early as possible. Your intercessors go from killing 2 to 3 units per action point to 4 to 5 units per action point. Once they get a bunch of veterancy on them, they can start killing even more. A Hormagaunt and Termagant unit with 5 to 6 model is still a threat in Company Captain, and so without an auto bolt rifle, you'll have to use a second intercessor squad to cripple the unit. With an auto bolt rifles, those 2 intercessors can now target 2 separate swarm units and cripple them both. Again, wiping a swarm isn't necessary. Intercessors are necessary because they are cheap and can help you deploy a larger number of squads. More squads means more action points mean more attacks, which means more command points if you got the command ability early, and most importantly, more targets to split the enemy fire between. Small elite armies will find themselves getting swarmed and focused down from the sheer number of reinforcements the enemy gets at this difficulty. Your elite units simply can't kill them fast enough here. The second upgrade you should prioritize is heavy plasma incinerators for the Hellblasters. The heavy plasma incinerators work really well with Carlyon's tactical accuracy buff. With their overcharge and that buff, they can one-shot almost anything in the game. Be careful with positioning them, as they are one of the few units whose accuracy gets worse the closer the enemy is to you. Use Carlyon's buff often. It has a 1-turn cooldown, so you'll have it every turn. 2 or 3 Hellblasters, plus 1 or 2 Dreads, should cover all your anti-single entity monster needs. Everything else needs to be focused around stopping swarm units and the elites. Mind you, heavy plasma incinerators do cost 90 points on this difficulty, so it's really difficult to run multiple of them. I find if I put more than 4 in my army, it becomes really hard to protect them, because I personally run 2 Dreads, including Quindar, and 2 Hellblasters. You can run 2 Hellblasters with the upgrades and 2 without if you want a more diversified damage output without sacrificing too much of your front line. Assault squads are terrible in combat and are only affected if you charge or attack from the rear. They trade with other melee troops very poorly without upgrades, and struggle to kill more than 2 models in this difficulty when attacking from the front. They are excellent cannon fodder and zone control units. In this difficulty, you will need cannon fodder, especially when you start coming across exocrines. Exocrines? I forget. They cost no requisition point to recruit and are one of the cheapest units in the army, so sacrificing them is not an issue. View them as a one-time use crowd control spell, because ranged units engaged in melee combat have to disengage from melee, otherwise they suffer from massive accuracy debuff. Also, melee units on attack can place everyone in the 3 squares in front of them in zone control, meaning they can't move without taking damage or eliminating the assault squad first. Other tips: veterancy is really good on intercessors who, in tandem with assault tactic buff and auto bolt rifles, can really start wiping swarms. Keep your intercessors alive as long as possible. Try to get to the objective as fast as possible as well. Enemy reinforcements are endless and can wear you down over time. Completing the objective puts a halt to their reinforcements or causes one last burst of reinforcements. Venom throats are notorious early game. They have a one-turn ability that makes them really hard to damage from range. If you see they have their Spore Cloud buff on them, just set your units to overwatch in front of them and hope that they are the first to move. Or if you have space and you're not defending a point, then moving your units out of their movement range is the best option. Carlyon is a really effective answer to Venom throats early on. Use his jump pack to get behind them and then rear-attack them. Because of the massive bonus rear attack gives you, he can sometimes wipe an entire squad of Venom throats in one turn. You also want to bait Venom throats into using their AoE attacks. Killing models instead of doing maximum possible damage holds just as true for you as it does for the Tyranids. The damage of the AoE attack and the subsequent poison is much lower than the damage of their melee attacks and the poison that their melee attacks apply. At this difficulty, they can even take down aggressors in one attack. You can bait the AoE attacks by just having 2 units within 1 or 2 square of each other. If you have the DLC, then the Sanguinary Guards are also a good option for dealing with Venom throats and basically everything. Terminators are solely designed to tank and kill large entity monsters. And also, their tanking ability is not fully realized until you unlock Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. Until then, they're basically an overpriced aggressor. Saving your skills points to get quickening on Quendar as early as possible is also a very good investment, especially in the place of challenge level where you are surrounded by 3 exocrines. A melee focus army is also very helpful in this level. Aggressors are really good frontline troops, but dreadnoughts and tanks are better. Look to replace your frontline with dreadnoughts, tanks, and some sacrificial assault marines. The weakness of the range focus army is that your frontline will take a pummeling. In a range focus army, they are out there by themselves and they take much of the enemy's focus fire. So you will end up losing quite a few aggressors and sometimes even a dread or 2. Since these units cost requisition points and you have a very limited number of requisition points early on, this means that losing even one can start causing a snowball effect that makes future missions even harder. You will lose squads in Company Captain. That is why sacrificial assault marines are so important. Always have 2 of them. Use them to dive headlong into the enemy in order to save your elite units. Inceptors are the best unit in the game, period. With plasma exterminators, they can kill damn near everything. I always run at least 3 whenever possible.
Leave nothing but stains beneath our feet.
They do get wrecked by exocrines. So how do you approach exocrines? You do so by using your dreadnoughts and tanks as cover. And yes, they do count as cover, with the Ball Predator tank counting as full cover for some infantry units. Keep your army together. At this difficulty, low tier units do way too much damage, and the AI will hunt down your isolated units and swarm them. Outside of dreadnoughts accompanied by a tech marine, or land speeders and inceptors with their insane mobility, most of your army should stay close to each other. Also, try to maintain full momentum on units that have multiple hitting attacks. At 100 momentum, all Blood Angels get 30% crit chance. This isn't great on Hellblasters with heavy plasma incinerators, because they only get 1 attack each, so they only get 1 chance to crit. Inceptors, on the other hand, with their massive 24 attacks per action point per model, can wipe out entire swarms at 100 momentum. Another thing concerning 100 momentum is any empowered heal you cast will not consume the cooldown of said heal. So if you have both your action points and your healer is at 100 momentum, you can cast 2 heals. Just make sure you cast the empowered one first. This is also the reason why you should never end your turn with your Tech Marine and Apothecary having any action points. Doing so will incur an instant 10 momentum penalty, so always burn your action point with them. Best way to do it is to finish off damaged swarms. Once you've acquired both the Autobolt rifle and the heavy plasma incinerator, you can spend your skill points based on your playstyle. I like to use aggressors and dreads, so I try to unlock flamers on either one of those. Flamers on your frontline troops, except for Assault Marines and Death Company, are a must. You can also give the Predator the Flamestorm Cannon, but on this difficulty, it costs 100 points. So your Predator, which is already pretty damn expensive, goes up to 305 points, which is massive. It is the most powerful flamer in the game. I personally prefer to rush Scions of Sanguinius on the Apothecary skill tree because it gives a massive HP buff to all your units. And just everything in that skill tree all the way up to the Scions is just universally helpful. So yeah, those are my quick tips to help you through Company Captain difficulty. This one is kind of focused on range weapons. Melee build is a little bit more tricky, but a lot more efficient. I believe it's a lot more efficient. So I'll do a different video on that. Also, I just want to say the way this game balances higher difficulty is one of my favorite ways of the game balancing higher difficulty. I hate RPGs and RTS where they balance higher difficulty by just pumping up the damage and stats to god tier level. It's a very lazy way of balancing, and it usually renders a lot of your builds and a lot of things that you enjoy about the game useless. Both Dawn of War 2 and Total War Warhammer are super guilty about this. Dawn of War 2 especially. On Primarch difficulty, the AI does 300% more damage, which renders my favorite part of the game, which is the defining feature of Warhammer 40k, that is glorious melee, completely useless. Battlesector balances difficulty in the best way possible. It gives a decent buff to the enemy, but not overwhelming. It gives them massive amount of reinforcements, and it increases, not too dramatically, the cost of your resources. This kind of balancing kind of forces you to do more with less, but without making it feel like your amazing army and build have been completely invalidated. And it creates this feeling that you truly are facing an endless horde of Tyranids, like a swarm of endless enemies just coming at you. And it feels overwhelming and it feels dreadful, but when you beat them, you truly feel like a heroic space marine beating all odds and coming out victorious. And it feels glorious. For me, playing on this difficulty turned this game from just another Warhammer 40k title to a game that I would recommend to anybody. I actually fell in love with it as soon as I switched the difficulty. At first, I was really bored. I was playing it on Astartes difficulty, and I was basically, by the third level, I was bored. And I was like, I'm gonna turn up the ability. And it just feels so much better, and you truly feel like you're going against an endless swarm of Tyranids, just overwhelming you with numbers. To see the enemy having at least 30 to 40 models on the map, and you're looking at your 10 models, and you're wondering how the hell you're going to kill all of these guys, is just like, it captures that, what it would feel like facing Tyranids in that environment should feel like. No? I don't know if it makes sense. I highly recommend that you give this difficulty a shot, even if you're the type of casual gamer who likes to just enjoy the story and such. It will truly challenge you, and you will enjoy like the results. Anyway, that's my guide. And yeah, next time I'll be back with a melee build. Woohoo, for the Emperor, just like the Emperor intended. See ya.